Low 70s. Weather today is brought to you by St. Vincent de Paul's Chip In for Charity event held Thursday, May 23rd. You can learn more at svdpdsm.org. That's your forecast on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, connecting listeners to Christ.
Listener-supported Iowa Catholic Radio, 1150 AM KWKY Des Moines, 94.5 FM K233BT Des Moines, 88.5 FM KIHS Adel. Online anytime at iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. We are broadcasting on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. I am Joe Stopulos, and today I'm going to explore the themes mostly of love, justice, mercy, injustice from Les Misérables. Obviously, most people are familiar, at least somewhat, with the musical. After watching it for the second time, well, third time, I guess, if you include the movie, I decided it was time, through the promptings of my wife, to read the book. And there's just so much great stuff in there. And if you listened previously, I've done a couple other things like this, most notably probably with War and Peace, and I got so much positive feedback on it that I thought I'd try to jump into it today with Les Misérables. Let us start in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl by the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Les Misérables by Victor Hugo, 1860s is when it came out. Again, most people here, most people listening, and myself included, until I read the book, are mostly introduced to it nowadays through the musical written by Jean-Claude Schoenberg, I believe, in the 1980s, and it's been a mainstay on Broadway ever since. And I am, full disclosure, not an enormous Broadway musical person. I've watched a couple of them. I've heard a couple of them. You'd think, given how obsessed I am with Les Misérables, that I would probably do more of them, because I'm sure there's other really good ones out there. None have really ever gotten me that into them. I don't know what attracted me originally to Les Misérables in the first place, but man, I love it. I've got the music, I've got the CDs, I've got the piano scores, and now the book. I just fell head over heels into it. I originally saw it first at the Playhouse in Des Moines, and it was amazing. They did such a great job at the Playhouse. It was really an incredible experience. And then most recently, it was here at the Civic Center, and Kristen and I went, and that was the first Broadway production I've ever seen of anything. And it was, again, amazing. And I know countless people here in Des Moines who also went and had a similar experience as I did. And then the promptings of my lovely wife, and as I've mentioned many, many times, and I'll mention it again as we get into some of the characters, because I think, again, Hugo has his pulse on humanity. That's the reason. I'm not just doing this for a book club. There are truths that he understands and can relay through his characters. The one I'm going to talk about now is the importance of decisions that you make, and I talk often at times about the importance of a spouse who's going to push you to be a better person. Well, Kristen was insistent that I read the book. She goes, "You like the play, you like the movie so much, you've got to read the book," because she read it years ago, and she was like, "It is so good, and it gives you so much more depth into these characters you already love and these themes you already love. Why wouldn't you just do it?" And I'm like, I don't know. It's a 60-hour audio book. It's a 1,500-page book. It's a kind of a big undertaking. Well, I'm glad I have a wife who insists on me becoming a better person and doing harder things and getting out of my comfort zone. So I did it again, this time with Les Misérables. And I actually had a client who also, at the same time, this is all kind of happening at the same time, converged, wanted to push me to read Les Misérables. And again, I'm glad I did. And so I'm going to head to a short break, and we'll dive into the book, some of the characters, some of the themes, some of the quotes. Again, I think the reason I think it's worth us doing this is it's important for us as men to be cultured in this, to understand what the great books are trying to teach us. And then also, again, there's a reason that there's the good books and the great books. The great books transcend. They tend to speak to parts of humanity that are otherwise difficult to communicate, and they can shed light on those things. And so in the next segment, I will dive deeper into Les Misérables and some of those amazing themes that Hugo pulls out. We will head to a short break, and we'll be right back.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Gold Dome Buildings. Gold Dome is locally owned and operated, serving Des Moines and surrounding areas since 1992. Builders of garages, farm buildings, customized backyard sheds, and playhouses. GoldDomeIowa.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Farm Bureau Agent Cindy Schulte, an authorized independent agent for Walmart Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Iowa, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Learn more at 515-226-2111 or cindyschulte.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from First Heartland Financial Group consultant Scott Prickett, an independent financial firm offering personalized financial advice with your insurance and investments for all stages of life. 515-202-6218 or online at firstheartlandfinancialgroup.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bozen the Florist. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, weddings, whatever the message, say more with Bozen. Bozen.com. 515-244-ROSE. Bozen makes the moment mean more.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Fitness by Design, your neighborhood fitness studio, located in Des Moines, offering PH or fitness classes, private and semi-private training, Beamer, and massage. Learn more at fitnessbydesigndm.com, 515-770-3844.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Edible Arrangements, for their support, offering fruit bouquets and gourmet dip chocolate treats. On the go or have it delivered for that special occasion, ediblearrangements.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Ashworth Vision Clinic. Complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and urgent eye issues. 515-440-4610. AshworthVision.com.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio, diving into Les Misérables by Victor Hugo, however you want to pronounce it. So let's start with Victor Hugo. So he was an interesting guy to begin with. So he was born in February of 1802, and he died in 1885. So lived, 80-some years there in the 1800s. And most notably, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was in 1831. So he's doing that as basically a 29-year-old. Les Misérables, he doesn't release for another 30 years. And so it's 30 years later, 1962, that he finally releases this. And he was so revered already through his poetry, and again, that was his other major novel, was Hunchback of Notre Dame, that when it came out, there was so much demand for it because it had been so long since he'd written a work of any magnitude, let alone this magnitude, that people were busting at the seams to get this book. And so the first, I don't know how many pressings sold out, but it was millions of people had bought this book. It was just crazy to me to think, again, this is just, we live in this TikTok world that you can't get someone to sit down and read a 300-page book at all. And again, I realize we're just distracted in general, right? We have way more distractions and things to take our time, that you would have people clamoring to get a book that is this big and this intense. It just is. There's just so much going on in it. And to be going nuts over it, I long for those days, to be honest. I wish we had a society that clamored for when books came out. Again, not just any book, but books of substance, books that tell these incredible truths. Also, this is if you know anything about this book, which again, I didn't know much about it until a couple months ago, it goes on these enormous diatribes on random things. So the Paris sewers are notably famous. He goes on a 10-page rant about the history of the sewers. He goes on a pretty long rant on the Napoleonic Wars. He spends a very long time in the convent talking about what a convent is and how it works. And I'm talking, I don't know, 25, 50 pages on that. I mean, it's huge. Tremendous amount of time on these things. And you have people clamoring to get books like this. I also liken it to like when Franz Liszt, the pianist in the late 1800s, was going on tours. Like people were like going nuts to see him. Women were fawning over this guy who is a classical pianist. I wish we had people that go crazy over classical music and literature too. So Victor Hugo, also another thing to note before I get into this, the book has a lot to do with the coming of France and how it was evolving over time. Anyway, Hugo's parents interestingly enough, one was a Bonapartist and one was a Republican, and so that doesn't happen very often. So in this book, he talks a lot about both of those, and it's kind of interesting that this guy who wrote it felt it in his own life. Last thing on Hugo, his funeral when he died was attended by over 2 million people. That shows you. I mean, this is a guy who wrote books. He was a poet and a novelist, dramatist, and he wrote great works, but his funeral was attended by 2 million people. It's just incredible testimony to what was going on in that time. So I think it helps us to have an idea of what was going on in the 1800s. Again, my great grandfather was alive during this time. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about that all this is going on not that long ago. All right, so again, I bring up the musical to start. I think a lot of us are first introduced to specifically Les Misérables through the musical. If you have not seen it, so it's kind of my Lord of the Rings thing. If you have not read the books, you should read the books first before seeing the movie. You should. If you, like my friend John Leonetti, will not read the books, you refuse to read the books, you should at least watch the movies of Lord of the Rings. I will say the exact same thing with Les Misérables. You should probably try to read the book first if you can. But Chris and I are actually talking about this. The musical does such a good job that you could easily get into it through the musical, and you really aren't going to miss much. All you're going to do is have your experience enhanced, in my opinion, by the book. And so, but if you haven't seen the musical, you got to see it. It's so good. The music is obviously really, really well done. But then they also stay really true to the characters. There's a few things that I can nitpick on and whatnot, but by and large, you're working in time constraints of 3 hours. You're taking a 60-hour book down to 3 hours. You're going to have to make cuts, but man, they do a really good job of sticking to the main themes. Okay, so that's kind of my pause on the musical. Everyone should go out and see it. You can go get the movie. The movie does a pretty good job outside of Russell Crowe's singing. Outside of that, it was an incredible movie. So you've got the musical that came out in the 1980s, which kind of resurgence the interest into Les Misérables. All right, so we're going to start the book, and this is, I think, the whole thing. If you know the story, okay, which I'll just do a quick thing. The story is about this guy named Jean Valjean, who he was trying to help his sister. Their kid was dying, and he stole a loaf of bread. In doing that, he breaks a window pane, gets sentenced to basically hard labor for 5 years, tries to escape, ends up being 19 years. And so now he's not an escape convict kind of thing. And so he's now taken the path of evil, essentially. He's going to continue to do things that a convict would do because society has been this mean to him. So instead of forgiveness and trying to go in the better path, he's going to go off the path, and just because society treated him so poorly, he's going to rebel against society. Well, he meets this bishop, and so if you've seen the musical, you know that the bishop plays a small part in it. The bishop plays an enormous part in it. So in the audiobook, it was at least the first hour and a half before another character was introduced. They just talked about the bishop. And so one of the best parts about this, so Hugo himself he did not like organized religion that much, but he does, the star of the show in the book is the bishop. The bishop is present throughout. Even though he dies fairly early on, he's present throughout because of Jean Valjean's character. Everything comes back to the goodness of the bishop. So the first kind of lesson to learn here is in this idea of our goodness can be passed on to others to help change their lives. And you've seen it, and this is obviously it's a book, it's made up, but it's true. If we can show goodness, if we can be a rock on a hill, a light on a hill, a rock for someone to cling on to, you can lift someone out of a worse spot and put them on a better trajectory. I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time, getting one step better, taking that first step. And I think that is really where the bishop has lived a life of heroic virtue, so much so that it changes the lives of those around him. You should read, if you don't want to read the whole book, you should just read the parts in the bishop. The whole first, however long it is, 100 pages, is so good because he's one of the best characters in the history of books. A couple quotes from the bishop that I think are pertinent. We can no more pray too much than we can love too much. We can no more pray too much than we can love too much. There are men who dig for gold He, the bishop, dug for compassion. Poverty was his gold mine, and the universality of suffering, a reason for the universality of charity. Love one another to him. Everything was contained in those words, his whole doctrine, and he asked no more. There are men who dig for gold. He dug for compassion. Poverty was his gold mine. Just, again, you're going to get this throughout the whole book, this beautiful prose. But this idea of the bishop is the guy who essentially saves Jean Valjean. He gives him a lease on life, and it's really cool throughout the book how it works. But his goodness was paramount to the entire story. And so the idea that each of us have this ability, we all have this ability to be that good person. We have the ability to show goodness, Christian virtue, to those who have never seen it before, right? And there are many people in the world who have never seen Christian virtue. They've never seen it before. Okay. As this goes on, again, the bishop is kind of there throughout. There are a handful of characters that come in to play throughout the whole book, and we're not going to get into all of them. Jean Valjean is the main character. But then he becomes a really great man, and in the book, there's a lot of things in the musical that are just giant holes, like how did he do this? How did he get so rich? How did he become the mayor of the town? All these things. You just have no idea. The book goes into tremendous detail of how this guy basically takes the bishop, gives him some silver, some candlesticks, and he goes and changes his life completely, and goes and becomes this incredible benefactor, and through that ends up helping this woman named Fantine. So Fantine is a gal who, in the book, you really get to understand. She was living a very fine life. She was, juvenile. She was 18 years old or whatever, and they were on this kind of summer fling. Four girls, 4 boys, and they were, they would call innocently just hanging out together and having fun. And the way he describes it's very pastoral or very picturesque and kind of a beautiful summer. They're out on lawns and eating picnics together and spending time in cafes and kind of this beautiful scene of 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, whatever they were, just enjoying life. Well, she makes a decision. She makes a decision to sleep with the guy she was kind of being courted by. That decision led to her getting pregnant, which led to then her basically immediate demise. She very quickly has to go give her kids to this family, the Thénardiers, who are horrible, horrible people, and then she has to go work away from there because of all the society doesn't want her to. She doesn't want society to know she's been knocked up and all these things. All that to say, she then ends up selling her hair and her teeth to pay for the bills for her child. Okay, why does that matter? It matters because the decisions we make have ramifications. Even something that seems trivial to her at the time of having a fling with a guy, it seems like a trivial thing, obviously was not, and it ended up having horrible ramifications. So I tell this to high schoolers a lot. I actually gave a talk a couple weeks ago to some high schoolers, and almost any time I do, especially to freshmen, 8th grade freshmen, sophomores, it's like I have to help them understand the decisions you're going to be making nowadays have serious ramifications. When you are in 2nd grade, the decisions you make don't have, they generally speaking aren't going to have very large ramifications. You don't. What shoes to wear, what kids to hang out with. They're not lifelong altering decisions. In high school, if you get pregnant or choose to get someone pregnant, you have that's a life altering decision. If you start doing drugs, that's a life altering decision. Where you go to college, if you're going to college, these are major decisions that you're going to have. That might not, in the time, seem very large, but they are. They're huge. They change the trajectory of one's life. And I think, I'm brought up with the high schoolers. I'm like, I'm almost 40 years old, and almost every person I know who chews tobacco started when they were your age, period. It's like you can make a decision to chew tobacco. I know almost no one who started at age 30 just for fun. They're going to make that decision at your age today, and that will last. That's a reverberation throughout your life. Okay, and so this Fantine character, she makes a bad decision, and that decision quite literally ruins her life. Okay, so as the book unfolds, there's really a handful of themes that I think are pertinent to us. The main one is love and redemption. The other one would be kind of mercy and judgment, and then justice and injustice. Those are kind of the main themes of the whole book of what Hugo's trying to get through here. But I want to start with love, because I think of all of the things in the book that are so paramount, that stick out more than anything, it's his primacy of love, of giving love and being loved. And so I bear with me. I've got a handful of quotes here, but I think they're so good that if you can hold on to one of these again and hold with it to help us understand the purpose of life. God put us here to love him and to love our neighbor. Right? That's what we're called to do. And in giving love, that is one of the highest forms of worship we can have. So this is Hugo. What is love? I have met in the streets a very poor man who was in love. His hat was old, his coat worn. The water passed through his shoes, and the stars through his soul. Young poor man who was in love had nothing. Coat was worn, hat was old, water passed through his shoes, and the stars passed through his soul. Is nothing. This is at the end of the book when Valjean's about to die. He says, "There's nothing to die. It is frightful not to live. To love or have loved, that is enough. Ask nothing further. There is no other pearl to be found in the dark folds of life. To love or have loved, that is enough. Ask nothing further. There is no other pearl to be found in the dark folds of life." You can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. You can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. And so that last line there, and that goes on pretty well, actually. It's a pretty nice little paragraph there. I think when you talk about any relationship, but specifically in marriage, you can give without loving, you can never love without giving. That's kind of it. In a marriage, in a relationship, it's all about giving. It's about giving of self, the true gift of self, the sacrificial gift of self. And I think he's so poignant with that line. You can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. There's a few other lines that I think are good just to put things in perspective for life. There is nothing like a dream to create the future. Again, very Jordan Peterson-esque. What is the future that you want? I talk about the obituary a lot. What is the trajectory you want your life to go? There's nothing like a dream to help create the future. You have to even the slight edge I talked about. Figure out what is that goal? What do you want to look like in 10 years, 5 years, 15 years? Create that dream. Create the future. And lastly, I just like this. I like this one a lot because it's you can almost kind of hear it, like John Sr., the idea of getting away from everything. Again, this book written in 1860, there is very little technology, but I think this harkens to me the life I would like to live today in a lot of ways. A garden to walk in, an immensity to dream in. What more could he ask for? A few flowers at his feet, and above him the stars. I'll read it again. A garden to walk in, and immensity to dream in. What more could he ask for? A few flowers at his feet, and above him the stars. At the end of the day, that's it, right? I mean, so it's loving of neighbor, it's being in communion with God, it's all those things, and then it's just being with God in nature. It's feeling that connectivity to the universe through the Lord, and I think how much of what what I'm trying to do in my own life is to bring back some of that. And as bad as these times were, the 1800s, for many reasons, and in the book he goes into a lot of these things between revolutions and wars and dread diseases and whatnot. Man, I do love the fact that their connection with nature, their connection with actual reality is substantial, right? I mean, you see it right there. You can imagine what the stars looked like back then. You can imagine that they were substantially better than the ones we have here in Des Moines, where we're covered in light. All right, so again, you can hopefully get a taste there of the prose. The prose is beautiful. The way he writes is really nice, but he has a pulse on love, and he's a very fallen man, by the way. Hugo's he's a really fallen man. Was not a church going guy. Was terrible at relationships. But I do think it's funny how people like that oftentimes can write so well about love. They can write so well about these things. And I think if you stick with Les Misérables, you'll see this. You'll see, man, it's a story that tells truth about love, because the people who love, the people who sacrifice, you get to know them. That's why great books are great books. You can see the trajectory of these people who love, the people like the bishop, people like Jean Valjean. On the flip side of that, you have people, again, I'm getting too far in the book here, but people like Javert, people like the Thénardiers, who don't love, who don't give, who don't sacrifice, and their lives are miserable every time. And is this a book? Yes. Is it made up? Yes. But is there truth there? Yeah. There are many people in this book who are very poor but have tremendous love for themselves, for their spouse, for their family, and for their neighbor, and they're happy. And I think you can see that played out, obviously, in real life as well. So, thank you for sticking around on my rants on these books, but I do believe that there's a reason they are the great books. And as I waited 28 years before I jumped into one of them of my life, and now I'm playing catch up, I do believe that I have learned so much from them. And you can with these characters, you can start to feel you can feel your relationship with them. You can put yourself into their positions, them into yours, when you're ever facing these things. I want to be more like the bishop. I know that. I want to be more like the bishop. I want to be more like Jean Valjean. I understand. There's a very famous quote from the book that even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. And that's it. Even in dark times, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I heard Father Reed Flood say recently, every Good Friday has an Easter Sunday. I think you can see that a lot, especially in the characters of this book like Jean Valjean. So thank you for joining me on these thoughts, these reflections on the book Les Misérables. We're going to head to a short break, and we will be right back.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Caldwell Parish Funeral Home and Crematory. Caldwell Parish offers services that are unique to the individual while following the Catholic funeral rites. Caldwell Parish Funeral Home and Crematory, Des Moines' only Catholic-owned and operated funeral home.
Support for programming comes from the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Demand on food pantry services at St. Vincent de Paul has increased 40%. And to help support this growing need in our community, the Chip In For charity, St. Vincent de Paul Golf Fundraiser to Fight Hunger, will be Thursday, May 25th at Copper Creek Golf Course with a 10 a.m. shotgun start. 100% of the proceeds will go to fight food insecurity. To register and learn more about sponsorship opportunities, visit svdpdsm.org.
Support for programming has been provided by Permar Security Services, a family-owned security company that provides full-service security solutions to homes and businesses throughout the Midwest. Learn more at permarsecurity.com. Thank you, Permar Security Services, for supporting Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for programming provided by Modus Maryland, offering a wide selection of clothing for a baptism, first communion, quinceañera, wedding, or any special occasion, as well as accessories and jewelry. 4120 Southeast 14th Street in Des Moines, and online, modusmaryland.com.
Thank you to our business partner, Big Red Q Quick Print. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. BigRedQ-DesMoines.com. BigRedQ-DesMoines.com.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Pickerman Soup and Sandwiches, open Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Boxed lunches and catering platters are available for 6750 West Town Parkway in West Des Moines. PickermansDeli.com.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I went way over time, as I tend to do when I am flying solo. That can sometimes happen. But thanks for sticking around for the thoughts on Les Misérables. So much more to take in. I could really go much deeper into the idea of mercy and judgment, how we didn't touch on that, or justice versus injustice. Characters that we didn't get into, a lot of characters that are pertinent to these conversations and these ideas. If you haven't, again, read the book, there are many characters you don't even get to know from the musical, many themes that you don't get to know from the musical. Again, if you're a fan of the musical, you should just read the book. Just do it. The audio version is great. You should do that. Or get the actual book and enjoy it, dive deep into it with the book. And if you haven't done either, you have to just go rent it, watch it, whatever it is, and fall in love with this incredible work of art that is Les Misérables. Thanks for joining me today on Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Joe Stopulos. It's time to man up.
Want to keep up with what's happening at Iowa Catholic Radio? It's easy. Receive our free weekly email update to stay connected with your favorite radio station. Just visit iowacatholicradio.com and sign up today. This is Iowa Catholic Radio, connecting listeners to Christ.
This is an encore presentation of Be Not Afraid.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Be Not Afraid comes from Ball Team, your builder of all faith-based construction needs. Learn more at buildwithball.com.
Now, hear the good news and be